Just because we may not necessarily always remember it's here, or it may no longer have pride of place in our community, doesn't mean that it's not still significant.
BusinessJournalDaily.com 3 Minutes With is brought to you by Farmers National Bank.
Who's the only local bank with a mobile mortgage app? Farmers. Download the app to contact your lender, calculate payments, securely scan and upload documents, and check the status of your loan. Fiercely local, fiercely loyal, Farmers.
This monument was erected by the citizens of Youngstown in 1870, and it was dedicated on the 4th of July. It was a pretty ideal moment for the community to come together and remember how they had contributed to the Civil War, and particularly to remember the men who had lost their lives in that conflict. The city and trees definitely grew up around the monument here, which is interesting as somebody who studies monuments to think about how their prominence within our community maybe changes over time. So of course the layout of downtown has changed pretty significantly since 1870. At one point it was sort of in the middle of a traffic circle. You can find old postcards featuring the monument that sort of show how the arrangements down here have changed. And so yeah, now it's a little hidden behind these trees, and I asked my students about it. Maybe half of them know it's here, maybe a quarter of them know it's to the Civil War. So it was placed here by the monument builders who thought this will be a signal place in our community. No one can miss this. This will stamp, on the heart of our community, the importance of the Civil War to us. But over time, as the city's changed, this little piece of Civil War history has gotten a little forgotten. There's a monument in Southington that's a little bit different. That monument was funded by a private individual who then sort of felt at liberty to say whatever he wanted to say about the Civil War on that monument. And so its language is a little bit more divisive, I think is the term that we would use today. That monument describes the Civil War as a war of the rebellion, just like this monument does. Both monuments then are clearly saying that we feel the Civil War was caused by traitorous secessionists who broke away from the Union. This was a rebellion, and we feel like that's an important point to make on our monuments. So the Southington Monument stresses that point, but it adds something really interesting. It says that not only was this a war to defeat a rebellion and preserve the Union, but it was a war for the abolition of slavery. And so it makes that point really crystal clear. And that's, a point of Civil War history that's not necessarily noted on this monument here. What's really interesting, I think, about these Civil War monuments is, again, thinking about when they were placed. When this monument was placed in 1870, for example, people were convinced that this would continue to be sort of at the heart and soul of the community, and no one would ever forget about it. But again, today it's a little maybe out of the way, a little hidden, a little forgotten. And it's kind of interesting to think about how then the intentions of these monument builders kind of change over time, and the significance of the monument within the community changes over time. But just because we may not necessarily always remember it's here, or it may no longer have pride of place in our community, doesn't mean that it's not still significant. It's significant because it speaks to the literal history of the Civil War, the participation of men from Youngstown in that conflict, men who gave their lives, who suffered and died, white soldiers and African American soldiers alike. So it's a reminder of the many, many men who fought, the many diverse men who fought, and the sacrifices of this community to the war. But beyond that, it's a really nice testament also to how much their community cared about that and wanted it to be remembered. So it matters because it represents history, but it also matters because the Civil War mattered to people in this city, and they wanted people to remember that, throughout the ages.
BusinessJournalDaily.com 3 Minutes With is brought to you by Farmers National Bank.
Who's the only local bank with a mobile mortgage app? Farmers. Download the app to contact your lender, calculate payments, securely scan and upload documents, and check the status of your loan. Fiercely local, fiercely loyal, Farmers.